Day 726 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 404,000 military personnel losses, which represents an additional 1,230 in the past 24 hours. Then, as for hardware losses, 5 tanks, 36 APVs, 40 artillery, plus 2 jets. And this is not a news repeat. So we'll head back across to the map today as yet another significant blow for Russian aviation efforts, as the Ukrainian Air Force has shot down 2 more Russian fighter jets near the cliff line just south of the Russian-occupied city of Mariupol. And there we see it, the wingtip of the Su-35S variant getting fished out of the Sea of Azov waters, peeking out, and as such marking a total of 6 Russian aircraft down in just 72 hours. So the downing of these aircraft, including this most recent Su-35 and an Su-34 fighter jet, highlights an almost renewed effectiveness of Ukrainian weapon systems targeting Russian planes across southern Ukraine and the Sea of Azov region. A number of Russian war bloggers came clean on the incident, acknowledging the setbacks, all of which has been underlying a troubling week for Russia's air operations in the conflict zone. So it's obvious that a certain weapon system is hunting Russian planes down in the southeastern sector of Ukraine, and of course some do wonder or speculate if it's friendly fire as a friendly fire incident, or increasingly if it's some limited and clandestine F-16 sorties that are operating in the region using Sidewinders or more likely the AMRAAMs air-to-air missiles. But in reality, most likely so far, most of these Russian losses were due to a German-provided US Patriot air defense system stationed somewhere in the southeast. Also note, just the fear of being shot down can sometimes have the capacity to keep Russian jets grounded and away from the fight, unable to support their invading ground forces, which is great, but it's more of a 50-50 in that scenario, where half the time it does and half the time it doesn't, as Russia continues to exemplify their short-term memory throughout this entire war, which inevitably means that Ukraine is without much choice but to continue their defensive efforts and, if necessary, take out $100 million worth of fighter jets a day. Then we'll head into the northern Donbas today as Ukrainian President Zelensky paid a visit to the front lines at the command post of the 14th Separate Mechanized Brigade, which operates in the Kupiansk direction. And at this point, I think I'd really like to make a video appeal to Putin, much like how we see our fair share of them from Russian soldiers in the military blunder segments that I like to do. And it would be a simple appeal asking Putin to do as the enemy leader also does, and visit his men at the front lines for a war he personally started. So giving hugs, exchanging smiles, and most of all being comfortable around his own soldiers with all of their locked and loaded weapons. But of course, none of this will ever happen, except for some very rarely staged events, and never at the Russian front lines. Then, further into the map today, as recent delays in Western security assistance to Ukraine appear to be making for a situation of an opportunistic offensive environment for Russia as it launches offensive operations along various parts of the front line, thereby intensifying pressure on the Ukrainian forces. And currently, Russia is giving it a boatload effort, attempting to advance in 5 major directions at once, including Crimea, Robotyne, Sinkivka, Marinka, and the Avdiivka directions. And speaking of Avdiivka, with Russia absolutely in its attempts to make some new land gains now west of the town, with a very small push seen somewhere if we zoom right in here for today. Then, somewhere in the east, we saw a crew view of a Ukrainian Bradley M2 infantry fighting vehicle engage in a Russian position, actually this one also near to Avdiivka, with a TOW-2 ATGM, so an anti-tank guided missile. Which somehow reminds me of Russia's military parade day that is held annually on the 9th of May in the Red Square, which just before and after Russia's invasion into Ukraine, so May 2021, then May 2022, it more or less looked pretty standard in size, that is to say, massive. Then, as for their most recent 2023 parade, Victory Day, it was just an embarrassment, as they seem to downgrade from lots of active military armor and tanks down to a single World War II tank. Which truly is utterly embarrassing when you consider that Russia basically invented the modern military day parade, or at least being often credited with popularizing the large-scale, highly choreographed military parades that have become a symbol of state power and military prowess. Having said that, we don't do it that much in the West. It's a waste of time, money, resources. Plus it comes off as very much dictatorship-like. But now as time gets closer to the 2024 edition for Russia's annual military parade, I'll be talking a fair bit more about that as it comes closer to the day, and placing bets on what we will and won't see. Then we'll quickly head to the Zaporizhzhia Oblast as we saw Russian POWs surrendering west of Robotyne after initially managing to land inside a trench. And here I see 5 Russians clearly outnumbered by the 2 Ukrainians. And as for Russian tactics in the south, well, their playbook is pretty standard in this region. Copious amounts of artillery bombardments to flatten out the front lines 48 hours earlier, to then pave the way for some Russian ground forces and some heavy equipment to enter. Though it's not been met with much success, as it appears to have the unintended effect of creating a forward warning to Ukrainian units, which then expects the insignificantly sized Russian columns, leading to a bad day for the Russian forces. Then to the neighboring oblast of Kherson and over the Dnipro River as a Ukrainian FPV munition engaged in a dogfight with a Russian fixed-wing drone and as a result ending up downing it. Now in this event, the Ukrainian drone, which is where this video feed is coming from, seems to perform a couple of attempts or runs on the Russian fixed-wing drone, narrowly missing it the first time, then comes back around on the second attempt and bullseye, expended its load, taking out the Russian UAV. Amazing footage, really. Then, as for the rest of the region here, Russian forces once again tried to storm Ukrainian bridgehead positions, including places like Krinky, 14 times in total today, to no avail. And this location for Russian forces, which is about 400 kilometers or so from the Russian mainland, truly remains a bridge too far to support. And based on so many reports we've heard from Russian command, Russian soldiers, everyone in the Kherson region, it also seems to lack the political will for Russia, which is different to Russia's more easterly ambitions. And frankly, I'd say Russia's Southern Command is just working their butts off here with whatever lesser hardware they receive, just to hold the south bank of the Dnipro as best they can. Because it's pretty much a certainty at this point that Russia is never going to cross that river again. It's practically a logistical impossibility for them at this point. Then headed across to some news for today. So the Minister of National Defence of Canada announced the dispatch of more than 800 Skyranger R-70 multi-mission unmanned aerial systems valued at over 95 million Canadian dollars to Ukraine. And the features of the Skyranger R-70 multi-mission drone includes capabilities such as a 4-kilogram payload delivery, AI tasks such as object detection and classification, also autonomous-enabled operations in GPS-denied environments. And then we've got the speeds of up to 100 kilometers per hour, or about 60 miles per hour. Then the high-resolution electro-optical and infrared cameras to support operations under different lighting conditions. 256-bit encrypted, security encrypted communications, surveillance, reconnaissance, among many other functions that these ones provide. Then, in some similar news, there was a Bloomberg report on the United Kingdom working with countries, including the USA, to provide Ukraine with thousands of new AI-enabled drones that could swarm Russian targets simultaneously. And do note, Ukraine already has some in-field use with some of their AI drone creations, but adding additional technological partners into the mix could speed up Ukrainian proficiency in this sector, which is still a very horrifying concept to me. Then in some other news, the family of the late opposition leader Alexei Navalny has been denied access to his body, a move that has drawn international condemnation. Navalny's spokesperson reported that Russian authorities have refused both to allow the family to see the body and to transfer it to them, with this decision fueling further speculation and criticism, with global leaders pointing fingers at Russian President Vladimir Putin, accusing him of having a hand in Navalny's death. And the exact cause of Navalny's demise remains a topic of debate, with opinions divided between those who attribute it to the severe conditions of his imprisonment, to a blood clot, and those who believe it was outright assassination. So this incident not only highlights the ongoing concerns about freedom and opposition in Russia, but also puts the spotlight on Putin's increasingly authoritarian regime, raising serious questions about the country's commitment to human rights and international norms. And my Russian isn't great, but if I remember correctly, died of a blood clot at an early age, I think directly translates to was poisoned by a Kremlin agent. Then moving across to a bit of a lowbrow funny to round it all off for today, guys. So Putin recently stated that Russia is close to creating cancer vaccines, and perhaps Putin is trying to demonstrate a high Russian aptitude for creating the holy grail of certain medical science cures as some sort of fakery or sweetener to get the rest of the West off his back as some sort of negotiating strategy. But Putin can already guarantee that no Russian citizen has to die from cancer by sending them to the front lines instead. He's already got the antidote. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like and comment. I really do appreciate it. And I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.